a text like the one we just heard, for someone in my position who gets to stand up next and say a few words, it's just like there's too much to say. This is one of those passages where it's like, where do you even begin? So when it gets to that situation, I decide to fine-tune a few details. So we're going to look at a couple of the names that were mentioned in this text, and then a specific phrase offered at the end. But before we get to that, I need you to fill in this blank. Ready? Na 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 na. Yes. Did someone say Spider-Man? No, Batman. Yes. Every sermon, especially on in the height of Comic-Con, should begin with Batman. Are there any Batman fans here? A few of you? Okay. Any Batman fans online? Okay, everyone who raised your hand, I'm going to apologize right now because I'm about to offend you. Batman is the worst. Now, blasphemy! You can say a lot of things in this church, but not that. Let's talk a bit about Batman, for those of us who might not be as familiar with his narrative. First off, I have read barely any of the comics, and I have not yet seen the new show Gotham, but I've watched all the movies, from Michael Keaton up to Christian Bale's, even with that whole George Clooney accident in between. Batman is the story of a millionaire in the city of Gotham. He inherits his family's wealth. His name is really Bruce Wayne. Don't tell anybody, spoiler alert. And he uses his money to build him this elaborate cave underneath his mansion where he entertains his boyhood trauma with rats that fly, known as bats, to become the Dark Knight with a fancy car that only he can drive and a whole bulletproof wardrobe and enough arsenal to take down every villain in Gotham. And he goes out and he does what he does, which means he's, millionaire playboy by day, secret superhero by night. He's in a city that's in pieces, and Batman does everything he can to bring peace. Or does he? Like I said, Batman is the worst. We'll get to that later. Let's go back to the text we read a moment ago. The text begins with two names which are very difficult to pronounce even after you've taken a few years of Greek in seminary. We will just call them S and E, the two women in Philippi. Now, first off, one thing that needs to be celebrated is that these two women are mentioned by name. In a text that's often overrun by patriarchy, here are two women who are lifted up and offered as co-workers for the gospel. That's basically saying they helped run the church in Philippi. But Philippi is in pieces right now. There's a conflict. We don't really know what the conflict is because when you read a book of the Bible like Philippians, it's a letter, you're reading someone else's mail. So they knew what they were talking about, but we're reading it about 2,000 years too late, and we're not quite in on the inside jokes. But all we know is that Philippi is in pieces. There is some sort of trouble, some sort of chaos, something that isn't quite going right with the community that gathers in Philippi. And then Paul continues his letter, and there's this phrase that struck me. Peace that surpasses all understanding. We start with a conflict, two people who are at odds with one another, a community in pieces. And then Paul moves to a peace that surpasses all understanding. Now, for those of you who love the Greek etymology of words, the word peace there is connecting to a word that would mean whole or to join. Interesting. Two women, E and S, who are in conflict. Peace that surpasses all understanding. Surpasses. The word surpasses is a Greek word, huper-echo, which sounds a lot like hyper-echo, because that's the etymology. This echo, this thing that goes there and back and there and back and there and back, beyond. It surpasses. It's more. It fills the space until all you hear is the reverberation of this wholeness. A peace that fills the space, that surpasses understanding. Now, understanding is literally a word that could mean mind, or a peace that blows your mind. So here's a conflict. Here's a community in pieces, and here's a person writing about peace. What is a peace that surpasses understanding? Now, I would try to explain it to you, but that defeats the purpose. It surpasses understanding, which I think is the point. We so often seek to get our arms around a peace we can understand. And Paul here is saying, no. It's not just that these two people turn and face each other again. It's that they are made whole in a way they didn't even think was possible. That rift that you thought was uncrossable, Paul is saying, no, the peace that surpasses all understanding means you even end up crossing that rift that you didn't think you could make it past. Which brings me back to Batman. Batman, is he a part of the solution in Gotham, or is he a part of the problem? Now, I'm indebted to a couple voices for this line of thinking. One is continental philosopher Slavoj Žižek, and the other is author and video blogger John Green. He wrote the Fault in Our Stars book. Batman, these two gentlemen say, he is seeking to fight crime. He is seeking to bring peace in the midst of the pieces. Yet at the same time, he perpetuates a system that brings us from Joker to Riddler to Two-Face to Catwoman to Penguin to any other animal they can think of. This is a millionaire who spends his money on a car that no one can drive but him. And if you've seen the movies, when he drives that car, there's usually a bit of destruction in its wake. This individual who is seeking to bring peace literally leaves the world behind him in pieces. Talk about tax increase in Gotham, which then inevitably reduces where the tax money can go to other places. Yet this millionaire Bruce Wayne continues to invest his money in his own personal weaponry to fight crime, rather than investing that money in areas that might be more systemic of a change, like education reform or healthcare reform or global climate change. He has millions of dollars, yet he needs a shiny new Batmobile. Like I said, Batman's the worst. Sorry that you hate me. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about a negative peace and a positive peace. A negative peace is the absence of tension, and a positive peace is the presence of justice. Now, one could say, and I bet Bruce Wayne / Batman would say, no, I'm trying to bring the presence of justice, but really it seems like he's just stopping one criminal, which opens up a gap in which the next one emerges, coincidentally just in time for us to go to the box office to see the new film. But what does it look like to seek a peace that endures, that lasts? It makes me wonder if Batman is seeking a peace that he can understand, but we are called to seek a peace that surpasses our understanding. Now, I think, luckily, when we look at the real world, we just might see a few superheroes who make this happen. For example, the most recent recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest recipient in history, 17-year-old Malala, who is working for systemic change, education reform for all people, for men and women. Knowing that when you begin educating everybody, everybody wins. That is a peace that surpasses our understanding. Or even we continue to live in the wake of the tragic events in Ferguson, Missouri, where the name Mike Brown is forever remembered, and the shootings that tragically go on. Yet that conversation still happens now, this weekend, as Camille Beckles, a member of our own community here at Middle, and from her hometown in Ferguson, returned back this weekend on behalf of Middle to stand in solidarity for peace that surpasses our understanding. You see, had Ferguson simply happened and then been forgotten, that would have been an even greater tragedy. But the fact that people are still gathering and marching and seeking to change a system, not just for a peace that lasts for the moment, but for a peace that surpasses our understanding. You see, Batman, he at times has his co-pilot Robin, but really he operates by himself. Robin comes along for some acrobatics, and I'm sure in the comics the characters are developed a bit more, but at least, in the movies I've seen with Christopher Nolan and whatnot, it is pretty much a one-man show. Yet even in the text that we read, these Christian scriptures, we see the character Jesus, who if anyone could have a Messiah complex and think he could do it all by himself, it just might be Jesus. But even Jesus said, hey, I need some friends, and I'm going to send you out 2 by 2, because it takes all of us to do this together. If Jesus had just said, I got this, it's on me, who knows what would have happened? But Jesus empowered a community to take that message even beyond him. It's almost like Batman needs to work more with the Justice League to see what kind of peace that could surpass their understanding. Does Batman bring peace, or does Batman bring pieces? Do you bring peace, or do you bring pieces? Now, whether or not you bring pieces, I'm sure you can recognize that there are times when there are pieces in your life that feel like they need to be brought back together. God is better than Batman, because God will always bring those pieces back together in your life, working for a peace that surpasses your understanding. And I believe even you are better than Batman, because you can join together to form a justice league of sorts, to work for a peace that surpasses all understanding. Which is why here at Middle, we are committed to working for not just a peace that will make it to tomorrow, but for a peace that will make it to the next generation. It's not just a peace that I can understand, but a peace that will surpass my understanding. Which is why every Sunday morning, there's a group behind this wall who fills bags with sandwiches, which are then taken to the parks, given to anyone who is hungry or in need. It's why this community continues to march with a pride march every summer, standing in solidarity and saying that love is love, no matter who you are or how God made you. A peace that surpasses understanding, that will continue. It's why this is a community that will continue to stand for reconciliation in all forms of disparity, gun violence, economic despair, whatever the injustice might be. Middle, you are a group of superheroes who advocate for a peace that surpasses all understanding.